the point is to be different. Differentiation is the point, right? That the most dangerous place to walk on the street is in the middle of the road. Stay on the left or stay on the right. But if you're in the middle of the road, you're going to get squished. Yet there's so many businesses, they want to be noticed, but they don't want to stand out.
Step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. I am so excited because we are continuing part 2 of a conversation that you and I started. So I'd love for you to, Professor, share again who you are, a little bit about your background, very short, and then we're going to get into what we didn't have time for in our last conversation, which was what are common marketing mistakes that small businesses make?
Well, firstly, thank you for inviting me back, Annika. That's very kind. I think we had a good time last time. So,
such a good time.
Yeah, can't have too much of a good thing, can you?
No.
So, yes, I'm Ranasinha. And I run a marketing agency in Europe by the name of Kexino. We're a team of marketing, creative, and business development specialists working with startups and small businesses to produce, better, more relevant marketing. The sort of differentiation, I suppose, is that as well as doing the strategy, the branding, the segmentation, targeting, positioning, and all that stuff, we adopt behavioral science techniques to help them increase awareness, reputation, trust, and obviously most of all sales. And that's sort of like our differentiator. And even though we're based in Europe, 80% of our clients are based in the US. There's this thing called the interwebs. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's quite popular. And yeah, we've been in business 17 years. There's 19 of us in 9 countries. 9 of us are in the US. The rest are in Europe, South Africa, 1 person in Japan, and 2 people in Australia. And I will warn you that I'm just coming to the end of a bout of flu. So if I start coughing up a lung, then you realize that it's nothing untoward going on. But I'll try to mute if I can remember.
Yeah.
And if I can get to the button in time.
Well, I just am thankful that you were willing to join me again for a second episode, even though you are getting over being sick, because our last conversation was so robust and had so much great content. And also, we talked about coming from storytelling cultures, and we like to share information through storytelling. And sometimes that means we might be a little more obtuse, right? We might speak a little bit more. We might go off on tangents, but we always weave it back. And I think, honestly, that's something that helps us bring people along. It helps people really relate to what we're sharing. And that's what we're getting to today. So you do all these amazing things. You also are a professor at 2 business schools. And I really wanted to get into that crux because we were talking, the last part, and I was like, wait, we can't just end here, where we're talking about the difference. And sometimes clients come to us and they might have a website, they might have a logo, they might have everything reserved on social media, but they don't actually know who they are as a brand. They don't have their mission, vision, purpose, right? All these other things that we consider the building blocks of any marketing, advertising, brand building, thought leadership, campaigns, all of that. And so I'd love for you to start sharing. I know you have 5. Let's get through all of 5 because I don't want to leave anybody hanging.
Let's see how we go. I don't know. Otherwise, maybe there's a part 3. I don't know. It's going to be a mini-series. I don't quite know what it's going to be like. Yeah, so these are, they're in no particular order, number 1. But these are things that have just come up again and again and again through our dealings with small to medium-sized businesses. And it doesn't matter whether it's B2B or B2C. It doesn't matter whether you're, under a couple of $1 million revenue or whether you're 15, 20, $30 billion revenue. There isn't any sort of rhyme or reason to this. And I think it's probably because many of businesses of those sizes have like a founder CEO at the head, right? There's no real like a organizational structure at the very, very top, like you would have at not necessarily a Fortune 500 company, a public company, but certainly a 20, I would say a $50 million plus type company where you'd have a different organizational structure, reporting structure, report all of that sort of stuff. It's a lot more entrepreneurial, a lot more, dare I say, seat of your pants sort of thinking.
Yeah.
Which is, to be honest, part of the problem. So, number one, I think, and this is really as a result of when we onboard a client, we go through this process that we call discovery. I mean, different agencies call it different things, but basically it's like knowledge transfer, trying to get up to speed with the industry, the category, I won't call it SWOT analysis, but, the competitor landscape, and a 360-degree view of the client-facing collateral that the client is producing now. And more often than not, certainly more often than should be, we have what I call a wee problem. Okay? It's nothing to do with cystitis or anything like that. Don't worry. Okay? It's because the clients, we're using the word we more often than the word you. Okay? So if your website, brochures, social media, whatever the tactical stuff you're doing, if you're using the word we, us, more often than the word you, then you really need to rethink your customer communications, because it just goes back to the way that so many businesses chose to communicate, even like sort of goes back to like the 40s and 50s sort of thing, it's focusing your messaging about, how great we think we are. We've been in business for 20 years. Our product is the best. We have 200 employees in 10 countries and all of that sort of stuff. I mean, why do I care?
That's such a good point, though. I haven't thought about connecting it back that far, but that's so true. Because that's how that's how people sold, right? You think about door-to-door salesmen or radio.
Because the relationship dynamic was skewed in favor of the salesperson in the old days, right? The salesperson was not only the one in control, but the salesperson had more information than the prospect. So the salesperson could say pretty much whatever the salesperson wanted to say, right? And this is where Crazy Larry grew up. Crazy Larry's auto lot on the corner, right? The guy with the shiny suit and the pencil moustache and the fake Rolex and, all those types of salespeople, okay, whose modus operandi was obfuscation, really, was manipulation, was coercion, right? Whereas today, salespeople, good salespeople, successful salespeople, position themselves as the unbiased, neutral expert to be able to help the buyer make an informed buying decision, right? But way back when, before we had access to that information, competitive information, we were somewhat reliant upon what a salesperson told us, right? About our situation, about how whatever they were selling solved our problem, how the competitors wouldn't solve our problem, and we may or may not have believed them depending on, personal characteristics, whether we like them or not half the time, right? But, all of that, but there's so many people still doing that today.
Oh, I was just going to say that. I actually remember, and this is an older example, but I remember the first time I moved to Los Angeles was in the late 90s, and I needed a car, and I went to a car lot, and my parents, I'm on the phone with them because they're in Kansas and I'm in Los Angeles, and I'm like, there's like, you should really get this car because this is very affordable and it's reliable. And I was like, no, I want that car. And I was just going to get that car because the salespeople said I could have it. So I drove off the lot with a car that was too much, for me, only to find out that then they're like, oh, we weren't supposed to sell that car to you because I was, at the time, working as a secretary. I wasn't making that much money. And so they did it because it was the end of the month and they were trying to make their numbers. But then the next month they were like, nope, we can take it back. Luckily, I had a family friend who was a lawyer who lived here. He's like, do you want to keep the car? Or do you want your money back? And I said, I just want my money back. I'll go find something else.
Another guy.
But
Yeah.
those techniques are things that are still very much in play today as well, where people, they get you really comfortable thinking that you can afford things that you can't, or that this is what you should be seen in because of ego or prestige. And it's not necessarily the right thing. That's where we see a lot of beauty brands also, right? Talking about they have this product and that product and the other thing, but they're not talking necessarily about the benefits. They're not leading with, how is this going to make you feel? Why is this good for you?
It really is. The word is manipulation. And it really is. It's using the uncertainties, our reluctance to conform, our ego against us. But the bravado, apart from the manipulation, but the bravado in, saying, we have the best product. And it's like, no, you don't have the best product, because if you had the best product, you wouldn't need to say you had the best product, because everybody would know you had the best product, right? People who have the best product don't say we have the best product. They don't need to. So that's already putting the antenna up and twitching, right? And then they say like, well, we've been in business for 25 years. It's like, and? Right? I remember when Bill Gates was still head of Microsoft, he gave an interview in some business magazine, Fortune or something. And he said, Microsoft was, one of, if not the biggest corporation in the world at that time. And he said, Microsoft is only ever 3 months away from bankruptcy. Right? Which is, pretty much every company, really. Okay. But, longevity isn't a sign of competence, is it?
Right.
Right. Or how does that offer any sort of comparison metric? If you've been in business for 25 years, does that mean you're half as good as a competitor who's been in business for 50 years? No, it means nothing. Right. We have 200 employees in 10 countries, tells me that your prices are so high is because you've got payroll to sort out every month, right? It's a meaningless metric. It's chest-beating rhetoric to make you feel good. The sort of thing you do at a company staff, go for it, sales kickoff meeting or something. This kind of stuff usually happens when the people within the business forget who the communication is aimed at.
Right.
Instead of thinking of the customer, they're thinking of themselves. Right? And one of the hardest things I've found is to convince a business owner to accept that you are not your target audience.
Right. Yeah.
The instant you change from a customer to a seller, your opinion is moot. You cannot be objective any longer. You're sitting on the other side of the table.
Do you find that a lot of prospects, when they come to you, have trouble overcoming this particular issue?
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time. And this is because of how close they are to the problem. They're looking at everything from an inch away from their nose. Right. And, you don't know my audience as well as I do, type thing, because, maybe they've been in the industry all their working life and they've jumped from company to company and they've got to the point where they've, gone out on their own and they've got a network list as long as your arm, and they think they know what makes their customers tick. But the instant they start talking about how great they are when they're a startup or a small business and don't have the support and backing of either a larger company or one with a longer reputation, then all of a sudden it comes across as hollow, as bravado. Okay. And again, it comes back to a value prop rather than, it's a solution selling rather than what the product does. At the end of the day, customers don't care about you, your product, how long you've been in business, what your inseam measurement is, what your favorite color is. Nobody cares, right? No customer would care about buying whatever you're selling if it didn't allow them to do something that they couldn't otherwise do as easily.
Yeah. Case in point, and this is where we always talk about know, like, and trust, right? So we assume those are given. I have a lot of connections that know, like, and trust me when I talk about the things I'm a subject matter expert in. That doesn't mean that they're going to buy from me. They're not going to necessarily come to me for advice on branding, marketing, public relations, how to start a podcast, things like that.
Right.
And that's fine. I'm not trying to sell that to them. Unless
Absolutely.
they are the people who are saying, hey, I see that you've been able to do X, Y, Z with your platform. I'd like to get there. Can we have a conversation? And so, one thing I'm doing right now is I'm in the process of meeting more people online, right? And figuring out who they are. And the truth is, they're all people I would really want to have conversations with anyway. So I'm not trying to hard sell them anything, right?
Yeah.
But so that you're hitting on something that we see over and over again.
What's related to this, we've been in business for 25 years and all that stuff. What's related to this at a lower level, a more obvious level, is this endless talking about product features.
Yeah.
Yeah, without framing those features in ways that customers can better identify.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
There's the old adage, if you've been in sales, you would have heard, features tell, benefits sell.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
And it's never been more important than now. Instead of talking about the product, it's about talking about how using the product solves a particular problem that the customer is facing. Okay? So it's Theodore Levitt's quarter-inch hole versus quarter-inch drill business, right? I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with the thing. So, sell the hole, not the drill. And yet we're still talking about features. The thing is, today in 2025, you can no longer rely upon features as a point of product differentiation, because at that window of opportunity, if you do have something that is truly innovative, the window of opportunity is tiny. And even if the competitors don't have quite what you have today, they will tomorrow, right? You look at any category, any industry.
I was going to say artificial intelligence, generative AI tools.
Right.
They don't.
Everybody's overtaking each other constantly. You look at iPhones and Android. You look at Canon and Nikon. You look at any of these things, right? Everybody's constantly stealing from everybody else, right? And everybody has this fleeting glimpse of a feature advantage, which is as long as the life of a mayfly. So you can't use feature differentiation as a way of differentiating anymore. You can't do that. It has to be something more tangible, something deeper. And yet we're still talking about features. Oh, well, the Okikoki 2000 has this feature, which, is upgraded from last time and compared to the competitors. And they start showing these matrices with dots and all that. Nobody cares.
No.
Right? How does, especially in B2B, right? If it's a B2B, the only reason B2B buyers buy is for three reasons, right? To make money, to save money, or to manage or mitigate a risk. That's it. Okay? In B2C, it's slightly different. Well, it's actually not that different, but because you're still talking about the system 1, system 2 type stuff, the emotional stuff, and backed up with a narrative that you can believe. The only difference really is that in B2B, you probably have more than one stakeholder responsible for the purchase of the product. But otherwise, it's the same. But we're still talking about features as though that's the only criteria why people buy. But that's not the reason why people buy. You could have all of the features that somebody wants and still not get the sale for reasons which are purely what you would class as being irrational, illogical.
But that's
and somewhat contextual.
We are as humans.
Right, exactly. And that's exactly the point. You're right.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to make sure that we get some of these covered.
Okay.
And I know you and I could talk all day. Really good.
It's my fault. It's my fault, Hanika. Once I get going, okay, like last time.
I love it.
Once I get going, I just can't stop. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about is self-diagnosis. Okay. And this is when usually a small business owner comes and says, I want X. And it's like, okay, why do you think your marketing problem is going to be solved by having X. Oh, I know my business. I know my market. I know I've watched a ton of YouTube videos. I know exactly what I need, and what I need to solve my problem is X, right? So supposing for argument's sake that X in this case is a new website, okay? Lots of times we'll get a company owner come to us and says that I need a new website.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, and what's your domain? Let's have a look. And okay, sometimes we take a look at websites and it's like, oh my goodness, right? It's like, I can't believe it, how bad this website is. But usually, because of things like, the templated website services out there, Wix, Squarespace,
Exactly.
Web, all of these guys, right? They build a template thing. You can get something which is pretty darn passable, right?
Yeah.
For not a lot of money. And so there is very little excuse to have something that just looks like, Picasso on a bad day or something. Okay. No, we can get something that looks good. And the problem with the website is not the design, the typography, or the visuals, or, all of those things are subjective, right? What I like is not what you like, and vice versa. The problem is the copy, right? The problem is the meat in the sandwich. The problem is the hard bit about doing a website. The hard bit about doing the website is not coding. Okay. It's actually being able to come up with resonant copy that drives a call to action. And that stuff you can only really do once you've got the basic building blocks in place, such as branding, segmentation, targeting, positioning, all of this stuff that we always bang on about, which is not very glamorous. It's quite, it's drudgery work. Yes, it's get your hands in the mud, never, your fingernails never quite come clean afterwards type of work. But it's important to be able to do that so that you can articulate your value proposition accordingly in a way that resonates with your TAM, with your target total addressable market, and with the particular ideal customer profile that you're going after. But that stuff is hard, because by saying we are this, what a business owner hears is that means we are not that, right? Strategy is about what you say no to as much as what you say yes to, right? And for somebody with an entrepreneurial mindset, they don't want to say no to anything.
Exactly. Been there, done that. The t-shirt.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that is a very, very tough position to be in.
Certainly is.
And it's usually the kindling that triggers off a number of, let's call them heated discussions about how to move forward. Because unless we have those sorts of discussions, what happens is the business owner spends, a not insubstantial amount of money having a new looking whiz bang website with explosions and car crashes and all sorts of whiz bang wonderful looking gizmos on there, but the phone's still not ringing, right? Emails aren't coming in. It looks great. It's got a new lick of paint. We've polished the chrome work, right? But still nothing's happening because we haven't worked on the problem. The problem with the website wasn't the way it looked. The problem with the website is what it said or what it didn't say. And this is why it's so dangerous to come to a marketing services provider to say, I need this, because it presumes that you know what the problem is because you've actually done, you're either educated, experienced in marketing to work it out, or, like I said, you've read some articles or watched some YouTube videos, but it's not something you would do in another situation. Okay? For example, if I got up one morning and I had a pain in my chest, right? And I went on the internet, and you know what happens. You go on the internet and you put in the symptoms and you get scared witless, don't you? Right? And then I book an appointment with my GP. I go and I say, look, I've got a pain in my chest. I've got angina. I need you to give me angina medication. What's the doctor going to say? He's going to say,
Yeah.
sex and travel, right? It's not going to happen. What's the doctor going to do? The doctor's going to ask you a bunch of questions. He's going to take your blood pressure. He may give you an ECG. He's maybe get some blood work done, all of that sort of stuff. And then you'll come back and he'll look and he'll say, you know what? Heart's fine, right? The reason why you have pains in your chest is because you had spicy food last night, right? And so what you don't have heart arrhythmia, you don't have anything wrong with your heart, you've got gas.
Yeah.
Right. But that is because the doctor is the expert.
Yes.
And it's up to them to do the diagnosis. You don't go and say, I want you to prescribe me this. Because the doctor wouldn't be in business for very long. He'd be struck off. Right. It's the doctor's job. You're putting your trust in an expert.
Exactly.
To deliver the diagnosis and the next steps to address the problem. It's exactly the same as if you go to if you go to a mechanic and say, look, I need a new transmission.
Yeah.
The mechanic's going to say, well, let me have a look.
Diagnosis. Yeah.
Right. Maybe all you need is an oil change.
Right.
Right. It's not up to you. Your job is to tell me where it hurts. My job is to find out why it's hurting.
Exactly.
And how to solve that problem. Now, it doesn't mean you have to listen to me. You can go and speak to somebody else.
That's exactly what I was just going to say.
Your prerogative.
I've definitely had clients come and want to be seen as something that they're not ready for, and they're not willing to take the steps to get there. They want to fast track it. Well, guess what? It's going to take a lot longer for them to go off and try to do it on their own, or try to find somebody else who's going to say yes to them, but isn't going to be able to get them there, because you have to take the steps. There are certain things that we know as practitioners that you have to do to get the visibility, to get the results, the sales that you want. So we've gone through 2. What is the third item?
The third item is not having a marketing plan. Okay? So by that, I mean diving straight into tactical without having a real plan. Okay? So
A strategy.
In effect, you're waving a wet finger in the air and winging the whole thing.
Thanks.
Okay? It's vitally important to have a defined list of the underlying business goals that your marketing plan needs to address. Because unless you know what the target is, how can you design a clearly defined plan that outlines the ways and means you intend to deliver on those business goals? Okay? Moreover, without having a marketing plan to steer our efforts, we don't know when and why we're winning. Right?
It's true.
So without defining, target audience segments, customer value proposition, market climate, client expectations, comp analysis, all that stuff, right? We risk losing opportunities, right? Because unless we know exactly why our marketing isn't working, then how can we do anything to change it, right? We're trying to hit a moving target because we don't know what's constant. We don't know what's working. Right.
We just had I was telling you, I graded the final papers for my students for the first quarter of the semester. And they had to walk through this kind of exercise of, here's a brand, here's the problem. So the problem could be they're using this ad tech technique, the smart tech technique. They're not working. They're not getting the numbers that they want to, or it could be a new product coming to market, whatever they created these other scenarios. And so they had to give me 2 potential solutions for, here are 2 potential marketing technologies that we should use and integrate, and here are 2 potential advertise. And then they had to go through, privacy and AI and compliance and geo-targeting and other techniques to figure out, okay, here's what we advise for the overall solution, and here's how we would roll it out together. So I love what you're saying, because this is so in line with what I'm teaching right now. And also what I see in practice is that so many times people do exactly that. They don't know where they want to go. They don't have that North Star, that big goal. And so you're just floating around in space, right?
And not only that, you're listening to the last person you spoke with.
Right.
Right. So the whole thing is just, it's sort of wind through the fingers sort of thing.
Yeah.
Right. So, unless you can put a stick in the ground and say, okay, We may hit the target, we may not hit the target, but this is our target. And we move heaven and earth to try to make the business revolve around that target. Now, we may miss, we may hit it. Great. Either way, we've learned. Okay, we missed it. Okay, how much did we miss it by? Why did we miss it? What can we learn from that so that we can do an iteration, and then the next time round, we can reduce that variancy each time so that, through a process of evolution, we get closer and closer to the target, which is different for every business, which is the other thing, I suppose. We can actually add number 6, right? There is no one size fits all, okay? What works for your competitor will probably not work for you.
Yeah, it depends on the market, the industry, but also your customer avatar. There's
Not
so
only
many
that,
things that we don't even...
Even if everything was alike, the last thing you want to do is ape the tactics of your competitor, because what happens is your ideal customer profile, when they see your messaging, they think of them instead of thinking of you, right? And a prime example of this is the way that cell phones are advertised, mobile phones, right? It's always a close-up of the phone, super, super, super ultra close-up, and it's spinning around with plinky-plonky music going around, and, and no matter who's making the phone, you automatically think of Apple, because Apple were doing this super close-up, plinky-plonky music.
You can make a full movie with your phone,
whether
or
it was Samsung
you can
or
add
Google
smiles to
or it
people's
doesn't matter.
faces. Yeah.
Right. Everybody associates that kind of marketing with Apple. So even if you're looking at the new Samsung whatever, unconsciously you're thinking about, oh yeah, I could do with a new iPhone. Right?
Right.
So the point is to be different. Differentiation is the point, right? That the most dangerous place to walk on the street is in the middle of the road. Stay on the left or stay on the right. But if you're in the middle of the road, you're going to get squished. Yet there's so many businesses, they want to be noticed, but they don't want to stand out. If you can see the irony there, right? You can't have one without the other. Differentiation is the point. Showing how you're different across a metric that's valuable in the minds of your buyers is the important part. And then if you can create distinctiveness within your category, distinctive brand assets, we go back to how brands grow, or what Jenny Remniuk's been talking about for, 15 years or something, right? Standing out in your category by using category entry points to position your brand and use those assets to evoke and solidify those mental structures, so that when somebody is in market, they think of you as well as whomever else they're talking about. A little bit like what we talked about last time.
Yeah.
But if we're not doing all of that stuff, then we're adding to the noise instead of the signal.
Right.
Right? The most dangerous place to be is in that sea of sameness where everybody else is. You might as well save your marketing dollars and put it all on 13 Black next time you go to Vegas, right? Because it's going to work as well as doing what you're doing.
Yeah. All right. So what is the next step?
The next one is splitting marketing providers.
Interesting.
So you'll have a small business owner who thinks they're saving money.
Yeah.
Because they're getting their logo designed by somebody. They're getting their website designed by somebody else. They've got somebody else handling social media. They've got somebody else handling their advertising. They've got somebody else managing their podcast. They've got somebody, whatever that list is. Okay. And they think, they're saving money. But the problem is, because each one of these providers don't speak to each other, right? That central point of governance,
Exactly.
the conductor of the orchestra, is you. And if you don't have experience or have not had been educated in marketing, you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
So you can't brief these providers. You can't offer amendment requests that mean anything, So what happens ultimately, inevitably, is that nothing gels.
Now, I
Okay.
want to ask a question about this because I've seen both situations where I was handling PR, social media for a client, and then one of their investors wanted them to use this huge brand company. We went through this whole process. Yes, that investor donated the money for that other firm, which was, I think, $150,000, which was way, way, way more than I was getting paid. But I could tell from the beginning of the meetings that this company was completely missing the mark. And when they delivered the final campaign, it was so completely off base with the brand. So that was an instance where I saw, wow, they didn't even listen to the founder, to the other teams the founder's working with. On the other hand, sometimes as a marketing agency, we do a lot of different things to scale up for our clients because we see, oh, we're only supposed to handle XYZ for our clients, but they really need this thing. So let's do this as well, even though it might not be a core competency of yours. I mean, so I see both sides of where it's fallen on its face and where that, for me, where I started as a PR firm and then added services, it worked for some clients, and other clients, it got really overwhelming to try to manage everything for them. Some of them had multiple businesses and they wanted different websites, and the conversations could get very convoluted if they forgot which brand of theirs we were talking about. So how do you wrestle with that when you are a small provider?
If you're a small provider and your services specialization doesn't completely encompass the needs of the client, you shouldn't be taking on the client because you're doing a disservice to that client.
Yeah.
Because it's just a matter of time before it all ends in tears.
Mm-hmm.
You're just prolonging the inevitable.
Interesting.
And they're going to throw you under the bus as soon as anything. You will get the blame. And not only that, everybody else who calls themselves a marketing agency will get tarred with the same brush. So it brings everybody, it brings the entire industry down because you've overpromised and underdelivered.
Yeah.
Right? If you can't satisfy that customer need, you shouldn't be taking on that customer. Now, if those needs have evolved and the customer needs to bring in competency from outside, that's fine. But then it needs to be agreed right up front who has the ultimate say on the creative output. Is it you? Is it the other party?
Mm-hmm.
Is it the client? Who is that?
And I'll say here for those listening as well, sometimes you can add services and do your very best. But if a client comes to you and says, oh, I've worked with other firms and they screwed me over, they didn't do the work, that's probably a red flag that client is going to do the same thing to you. in some cases. So, yeah.
And it may be nothing to do with what you've done.
Exactly.
You may have done everything right? You may have been super professional, fantastic project communication, checked all of those boxes. But the client is never going to say, you know what, I screwed up.
Yeah.
It wasn't the client's never going to say that.
And that's very rare. That's very rare. And there is a certain kind of client that I think has that personality, but it is something that we also have to be cognizant of.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So there's nothing wrong with bringing in other providers after the fact, as long as the pecking order is clearly outlined.
Yeah.
And the ultimate arbiter of quality has been defined. Who's giving the thumbs up?
Yeah, that's very fair.
Because otherwise what happens is you get finger pointing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, we've done our job. Must have been those guys. Right? And again, that never ends well.
No.
It never ends well.
What is, because I'm going to wrap us up here. Although I would love to continue talking to you about this. We're going to have other conversations for sure, whether it's for a podcast or just for our own edification.
Just for a chat, yes.
Yeah.
With an adult beverage in our hand, baby.
Yeah. What is the last thing that small businesses need to think about? We've given them a list of things they can do wrong. So on the flip side, here's what to think about when you're going on this journey. If you're looking for somebody to work with, you're looking at how you're going to focus your marketing. Are you talking about features versus benefits? Are you selling the right parts, right? The right story to your customer base? Are you self-diagnosing things that you're not leaving to a professional? Do you have a marketing plan? Do you have those KPIs? Do you know what your goals are so that a plan can actually be created and implemented strategically and effectively? Differentiation. What are some of your market differentiators? I know that could also go into the marketing and distinctiveness, you said, and then splitting up marketing providers, not going to one sole source of truth who maybe brings in other people if they need to, but who can really be that champion for your brand and help you execute a fully integrated strategy and campaign. So what else do you have for us, G?
The last one I have really is don't think that technology is going to solve all your problems.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Especially today in the age of AI.
Right.
People think they can just throw everything over the wall and have something come back again, which is going to work.
Mm.
And, we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, about the summary notes. Okay.
Yes.
And more, I can read, and it can't be just me, all right? Because I'm not special in any way, shape, or form. More and more, I'm reading content, and I can instantly sniff out this stuff has been written by AI.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
it stinks to high heaven from 5 miles away. Now, if I can do that, okay, even a civilian, and by civilian I mean somebody outside of the marketing industry, I call them civilians. Okay, if I can do it, a civilian can do it. And if we're already at that point, we're going to get to a tipping point where the vast majority of marketing messages are going to be ignored or disbelieved simply because of the presentation of the information is just so hackneyed and cliched in its delivery.
That has a lot to do with
Right?
prompt engineering, I will say. If you
But even that, I mean, look at images, okay?
Mm.
AI images are the clip art
Yeah, yes.
of 2025 or of the 2020s. It just stinks so, and it says to me that you don't give a stuff about the quality of your messaging by putting this stuff out there.
Yeah.
Okay, it's clip art, it's royalty, it's not all royalty free, it's that really bad royalty free stuff that we've all seen, right? It's like you go to the Contact Us page and you see the same woman with the headset smiling at you. And it's like, this woman must be the richest receptionist in the world because I've seen her on like 25 different websites. How the hell does she get so much money? I mean, how can she do it all, right? Nobody believes that sort of stuff. And if the whole premise of our outlook to marketing is authenticity, then this whole thing falls down, right? I think I mentioned it last time about this quote that I read on Blue Sky, right? Somebody wrote that, why should I spend time reading something you haven't bothered to write? And it really is that. But I'm not singling out AI because AI works for loads of things and it's really, really good, far better than humans at a ton of stuff. But for some reason, we're trying to shoehorn it into things that it's actually not very good at. So why don't we use it for stuff that it's really good at and applaud it and encourage it and its development and stop using it for things that it actually sucks at? Right? And I'm singling out AI, but it's not necessarily AI. There are other things in technology. There's custom audience profiles. There's, remarketing tags. There's all of this MarTech stuff where the idea for marketing is to get technology to create 100 different headlines with 150 different subheadings and throw that all into a content management system to blast through a digital marketing platform, and then whichever one gives you 0.0001% better click-through rates, calling that a win.
Yeah.
Right? So that's another, I mean, to be honest, that's a subject all on its own.
I was just going to say that is absolutely a subject all on its own. It's funny because I'm creating an AI workshop, a generative AI works. Well, we're not just going to talk about Gen AI. I'm going to talk about the history of where AI started, to now and the ethical implications behind how the data is labeled and who's labeling it and how much they're getting paid and the get into all of those issues too, because I think it's important for people who are really using these tools to have that understanding of, yes, it's great that we have this technology, but here's the people whose backs this technology was built on. Here's how it affected them, psychologically, personally.
Right.
And how can we be better stewards? How can we ethically use this and try to put some positive energy, if you will, into this, into the world of data science and treat people well and treat people fairly for the service that they're giving. So anyway, like you said, this is a whole other topic we can go down. So we may have to do a part 3 down the road, but at least we have these two.
I'm telling you, this is going to be a box set, Annika. Right? We're gonna go. It's going to be a Netflix and chill. I can see it now.
I love it. So, yeah, and if you ever need a guest speaker to come to one of your classes, I'm there for it, and I definitely have to Zoom you in or something for some of mine. So, G, any last quote, mantra, words of wisdom that you want to leave the audience with for part 2 of our amazing discussion about all things marketing?
The only person who needs to like it is the customer. That's it. Anything else is ego.
Yeah.
Because it's the customer that pays everyone's salary, nobody else. So we just need to listen to our customers. And the thing is that customers want to tell us. They're advocates, they're supportive of us, and we just need to reach out to them. And they will tell us what we're doing right and what we're not, and how to improve. It's not, that stuff isn't hard to do. Implementing certainly is a challenge, of course. If it was easy, everybody would do it, right? But we just not spending enough time talking to people, right? As commerce, sales is still an emotionally driven behavior. So if we're excluding the human component because of distance and scale, then we have to reintroduce it from other forms of communication. That's if we're to remain effective. Yeah. And we're not doing that. And this is the reason why the effectiveness of our marketing is falling off a cliff. We're spending more and more and getting ever more reduced results.
All right.
That's it.
That's a great way to end this part of our conversation. So again, I just really appreciate you spending this amount of time with me and talking about topics that I know you're very passionate about.
I enjoyed our last conversation. I enjoyed this one. And, if there's a V3 coming down the road, then let's do it. But, it's always a pleasure.
Thank you again, G. And thank you to everybody, again, who's listening to this episode, who's watching it. Leave us a rating review, as I mentioned last time. And I'll be back again with another amazing guest to share their thoughts, their journey. In the meantime, check out G's information. I'll share his LinkedIn and his company website, kicksino.com, in the show notes for you to review and follow. So with that, have a great day, everybody. Stay well. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.